Hi, I'm Oli Davies. This is my 24 edge fishing. Today I'm at RK Leisure, Raisbury 1 South Lake. It's a lake I've fished before in the past. It's a pretty good edge in water. So I'm fishing pretty light. I'm going to go in and check in a few lightly looking areas. Hopefully have a chance to see one pick up the rig. We've made it round to the Finger Bays now, and although Raisbury is a little bit more accessible than it used to be, it's still very much jungle around here. It's wild, it's overgrown. There's a few nooks and crannies where you can poke a rod in, but it's very much jungle warfare. So I'm going to prime a few areas in the bays here, and I'm going to keep an eye on them, see if I can get some fish feed in, and hopefully stalk one out. I've got 24 hours starting from now. So let's get some bait in, try and catch a carp. This is a real good spot, this one. I've filmed them here before, picking the hook bait up. I'm sure that's one that just ghosted off there. There's one coming through now. Do you know what? I'm not going to bait this. I'm going to come and fish this one straight away. Sometimes when you bait and they come in, it's hard to get the hook bait down while they're feeding. So I'm going to set a trap, then bait and maybe sit here for an hour. But first of all, I'm going to prime a couple of other spots. So this style of fishing, or my style of fishing, it isn't for everybody. It's quite high intensity. It involves a lot of walking. It involves actually not a lot of fishing. It's not very relaxing a lot of the time. It's quite exciting. You know, I spend a lot of the time clutching trees with my heart pounding out my chest and actually watching the fish, and I find that really interesting. You know, it teaches you so much about carp behaviour. For me, that's really important to understand our quarry. I've had a few out of this swim before, believe it or not. Like right in front of the swim, there's a bit of protrusion in the bank. The margins are steep and deep, but it's a bit shallower in front of the swim, but it doesn't look like there's been anyone fishing there. It's started to clear up, but keep an eye on it. It's a reserve spot. Well, I've baited a few areas now. I've come back to the barrow, and I'm just going to start here in the first finger. I saw a couple of fish glide by and I didn't bait it because sometimes it's difficult to get the rig in once they're already feeding. But there's fish in the area, so I'm pretty confident if I set a trap, I won't have to wait too long for something to come along and find it. I'm not going to go too mad with the bait, just a small handful. And I'm going to fish a little cut down pop-up on a multi-rig over the top. Just going to trim the pop-up down by hand, nick a few bits off it. Make it a little bit smaller, a little bit less like a round ball. Just be fishing it over a little bit of flake and pellet. So luckily I can really see the bottom here, it's well polished. I can choose exactly where I want to place the bait. And I place it, not at the top of the spot, a little bit lower down in the deeper water, because it's a bit thundery today, there's low pressure. And the fish are bubbling in deeper water from what I've seen, so it's not a day for catching them right up at the top of the shelf. So having baited a few spots, I returned to the first spot, got a rig ready, lowered it in, put a handful of bait over the top, and it didn't take long to get a bite. In fact, it was so quick that we weren't really ready for it. I wasn't ready, I was fanning around on the barra, and Brad was still setting up the bite cam, and it sort of came out of nowhere. The fish must have come straight into the swim and nailed the pop-up. Well, that was a really quick bite. So quick we didn't even get the bite cam set up. The first thing I knew about it was that it was ripping off and the fish was making its way across the bay to try and get in the far bank snags. And yeah, it was quite a fraught tussle in and out of the weed, and you're sort of hanging off a tree there. There's a little bit of an overhang to your right and a little bit to your left, and using a short rod you need to get right down. As you can see, it's quite tight, this little hole, but there's nothing underwater. As long as I keep the rod tip down, I'm all right. And the bizarre thing was, as I was playing that fish, there was actually another one feeding right underneath me. You know, it wasn't bothered in the slightest. You know, even when the fish was thrashing over the top of it, it was still down there feeding. That other one is still feeding under my feet. Unbelievable. Should we get another rod down there? I don't know if you can see that. Really nice mirror. Can't take my eyes off it while I'm playing this one. But it was a good fight, and I could see straight away that it was a decent fish. You know, the average size is probably upper doubles with a few 20s, and this one was definitely well over 20 pound. Nice long linear. Netted just about where he was hooked. What a result, lads. Only started the timer about 10 minutes ago. So no sooner had I got that in the net and the heavens opened, and I mean opened, you know, we had an hour-long thunderstorm, and poor Brad and Tone, they got absolutely soaked. I got pretty wet myself. That's the only trouble with fishing off the barrier, is you're not really prepared. You haven't got a home or any shelter for when it does rain. You know, I just had a small golf umbrella and that was it. And so we sort of sat it out, waited for the rain to stop. Not much else you can do in that situation. Lovely raspberry linear. Good 20 pounder, well spawned out, but still a good sized fish. Yeah, and a real quick bite. So quick, well, it took all of us a bit by surprise really. Came straight in, and that shows the value of using a pop-up over that sort of baiting, because you quite often get them really quickly. You know, they come in, and if it doesn't spook them, that's the first thing they eat. What a result. Great start. I think one of the reasons that I love fishing the edge is not just like the excitement and being able to see what's going on, it's also the element of control that you have. You know, I can place my hook bait precisely, I can bait precisely, I can see exactly what's going on. There's no guesswork. Fishing out in the lake, it's all guesswork, isn't it? We're all, you know, we're taking the information and we're forming an opinion, but it's not actually based on what we've actually seen with our own eyes. So the second spot that I baited is actually a swim. It's not a stalking hole, it's an actual swim. And that's one thing to note about this sort of fishing, is it's not just sort of jungle fishing in holes or under canopies. This can be done pretty much anywhere, you know. And that particular swim, Party Point, there's a little bit of a protrusion in front of the right-hand side of the swim. So when the fish come through the channel from the bays out into the main body of the lake, they've kind of got to pass over it. So it's a natural ambush point, you know, and you can see them. It's only a rod length out, clean gravel, you can actually see the fish feeding. So yeah, cool spot. I could see 4 fish feeding there. When I returned with the rod, they'd gone, which is ideal again, you know, because you don't necessarily want the fish down there while you're actually putting the rig out. It can make things tricky. So I set another trap, a couple of handfuls of bait and a rig, and I waited for him to come back. That hook didn't survive that battle. The points just dinked over. So I'm just quickly switching hooks, which is easily done on the multi-rig. Literally put a fresh one on straight out of the packet. I'm recycling all the other components. I'm going to stick my board bead back on. I'll get a few uses out of those before they deteriorate. That just holds my sort of D section in place, if you like. Yeah, nice and simple. Don't have to tie a new rig. Rest of the hook link's undamaged. Quick, convenient. Bait screw back on, and that's it. A lot quicker than tying a new rig. Just going to need a new bait. That worked well. The scopex squid sort of matched the hatch type pop-up. Sometimes I'll use a bright one. I've got an orange one there ready to go. But I think the water's so clear that sort of off-white, browny colour is perfect for these conditions. Nice and easy on the bait screw, and then I'm just going to, with my fingernails, nick a few bits off the pop-up, rough it up, just make it not look like a round ball. They're not super pressured, these fish, you know, they live in a big lake, but they certainly know what a boil it is. Nice sharp hook, nice fresh bait. Let's set a trap, see what comes along. Now, Party Point's another good swim for watching the fish coming in to feed, and I sort of hung around and waited and watched, but nothing came in. And then the rain came again, you know, and it was really, really showery yesterday, another torrential downpour. So we ended up huddled under the umbrellas, hiding under the trees, and I couldn't really watch the spot as much as I would have liked. Lo and behold, about an hour in, just as I was sort of getting a little bit itchy feet and thinking I was going to move, it absolutely melted. Didn't see the fish come in, didn't see it pick the bait up, you know, it was raining, but yeah, we got a take. Oh, once again, a bit of a take out of the blue there. Midway through making a coffee, nothing down here. And one's obviously come straight in and nailed that pop-up straight away. Powerful fish. Once again, the rain has just stopped. This afternoon has been pretty miserable. Heavy showers. Yeah, it's more April than July, isn't it? But luckily, the fish are still up for feeding in the edge. I can see him. He's a nice mirror. Not scaly like the other one, but a decent one. There's another one following it as well. It's like they're a little bit spawny still. Just in the nick of time as the heavens open again. Oh, what an awesome carp. Number 2 of the afternoon, 4 hours in now. Yeah, it's actually been torrential rain for a lot of my afternoon so far, so I haven't had that much fishing time. Been sort of hiding from the rain under the brolly because it's been so heavy. But yeah, this one, I was just thinking about moving, to be honest. Been sat here for an hour, hadn't seen anything. The rain was coming down, so I was huddled under the brolly and it's absolutely ripped off. Yeah, mega one. Lovely, lovely carp. Well pleased with that one. So yeah, time to pack the barrow again, get on the move. I'll put a little bit of bait in here because I might come back to this one for tonight. It's a good spot, I think. Just fish a rod in the edge overnight. Lovely. That was 2 out of 2, you know, a really great start. Both spots had fish, both I'd caught off. The third spot also had fish feeding on it. This is another bit of a tight one, but it was also a good one for watching them. You can see them feeding right in the edge there. And while the lads were in the next swim, I actually filmed a little bit on my phone. Really excited, went and got a rod, and yeah, the fish never came back. I was planning on staying here for a little while, but having been sat here for half an hour, I'm not feeling it. There were only a couple of fish coming in here and feeding, you know, the same 2 fish in this small bay, and they appear to have vacated. Can't win them all. So yeah, time to make another move, I think. I haven't written this spot off. I will come back and check it again. I'll put a little bit of bait in when I leave. Just might have to play a slightly longer game. So I don't know whether that was my fault that it hasn't come back or whether it just hasn't come back. A lot of this sort of fishing is timing. You know, getting the rig in without the fish seeing can be the difference between catching and not catching. So yeah, he wasn't here when I turned up. A load of bait in, set a good trap, but he hasn't come back. And then it's a question of how long you give it. You know, we could sit here all day and it might not come back at all. I might have spooked it, or it might have just decided to go on its merry way. It's your own personal judgment how long you give it, really, but because I haven't seen that many fish coming through here, it's not the sort of place that I'm going to spend loads of time. I'm looking for numbers of fish, so the more that I can find, the more that will be swimming regularly over the rig and bait, the more chance we've got of getting a bite. So yeah, time to make a move. This style of fishing isn't for everybody. You need a degree of motivation, shall we say, to keep rolling the dice and keep looking. It's often very easy to sort of settle and sit down, but for me, I really want to know that there's fish there. I think that's the most important thing for me to take from this, or for anybody to take from this, is that you're not just fishing for nothing. You're not just hoping that something swims through. You're actually putting in the groundwork and finding fish to fish for. Fishing for an opportunity, fishing where you've seen fish feeding, fishing where you know fish are going to pass through regularly. You know, some of the spots that I fish are sort of dead ends, and if there's nothing there, you're not going to catch any. Other spots, you can afford to sit there a little bit longer because there's a through traffic of carp. It just depends, but it's all important. The all important thing to take from it is find the fish. Here's my 60-second top tip. Concealing the line's an important part of fishing for carp. You know, you're setting a trap and you want to keep that trap as discreet as possible. Down at the rig end, I use a Klingon leader. Now I use about 6 feet of this, a nice long length, and it keeps that line pinned down around the rig. At the end of it, I'll put a big blob of Klingon putty. Now, this stops the leader being lifted up off the bottom by the main line, any undertow, any weed catching the line, and quite often when you're fishing in the edge, it's actually coming straight up the bank at that point. So I want to keep that line as close to the bank as possible, hidden away. Now, in order to do that, you also have to fish it quite slack. So I'll always fish as slack a line as possible. You know, not so slack that I don't receive any indication at all, but slack enough that it is sort of out of the way of any carp. I don't want a bowstring going through right down to the lead. So my fourth spot was another area which I haven't actually caught a fish out of before, but it's one which I've baited previously and I've seen fish feeding in previously. To all intents and purposes, it looks quite snaggy, but actually if you sort of give it a proper risk assessment, there's not that much underwater. One branch about 8 yards to the left of where I was fishing, and in my mind that was the one that I had to be careful of. You know, always helps to have a plan in this sort of situation, as I've already mentioned. You know, if you know the fish are going to bolt a certain way, or you suspect they're going to bolt a certain way, you know, you can be prepared for that. The gear that I'm using is pretty strong. You know, I'm not messing about here. We're fishing for good sized fish, and the environment they live in is really, really harsh. It's a very weedy pit, it's snaggy, and each of those snags, everything in the water is covered in zebra mussels, razor sharp. So 20-pound mono main line, 40-pound Klingon leader, 25-pound skin link, and a big hook, size 5. I could go bigger, but size 5 works for me in this situation. I don't suffer many hook pulls. It's a good strong hook. And then having a bit of a plan, and also being close to your rod. This isn't the time for trotting from your rods or having a social with your mates. You know, you need to be on them. I'm sat here 6 foot behind my rod. Ideally, I'll be watching the spot. You know, you actually, when you see the fish pick your rig up, you've got a little bit of a head start on them. Often I'm jumping to grab the rod before the alarm's even made a sound, you know, because you can see what's going on. But here I'm just going to sit back, going to chill out. It's finally stopped raining. We can dry off a little bit. Give it an hour in this spot. It's a nice quiet little corner. See if anything drifts in. When you walk into a swim, it often pays to assume that there will be carp in the edge. Even if it's quite open, you know, quite often they're sat quite close in front of you, and I've lost track of the amount of times where I've bumbled into a swim, you know, not thinking, and I've spooked carp out at the edge. We've all done it, haven't we? So presume that there's fish. Creep into the swim, stick to the sides of the swim, try not to cast a shadow. You never know, there's chances are there won't be anything there, but if there is something there, you don't want to spook it. Having exhausted the options in Finger Bay, I had one last check around there, and I also had a little check in Hooligan Bay. Just wanted to see if there was one last opportunity before it got dark, before I decided somewhere to set up for the night. Okay, well, just finished my first coffee of the morning, and I haven't really got anything to report. Didn't even get a really good night's sleep. The mozzies bothered me a little bit, and I had a couple of liners in the early hours, which made me think that it might have happened this morning. However, the fish appeared to be a little bit further out. There's a group of fish bubbling about 50 yards out from here, and as I'm sort of edge fishing today, I can't really fish for them. So it's time to get packed up and get back on the road again. Plan's going to be the same as yesterday. Going to just be wandering around, baiting a few spots and looking for an opportunity in the edge. I've got a good few hours yet, didn't start till after lunch, so yeah, it gives me the opportunity to maybe get a couple more things going again and nick a bite or two more, which would be nice, wouldn't it? Cool, so I'm going to finish my coffee, get the bed chair back on the van and get on the road. So come 8 o'clock, it was clear that the chance was gone, and it was time to get back on the barrow again and check the spots that I'd baited the night before and that I'd seen fish on the day before. So I dumped the bed chair back at the van and went back stalking again. I've just popped back to the van for a quick reload because my baiting pouch is running a little bit low. Real simple, just a mixture, a few small pellets, a few 6mm pellets, And then I'm bulking the mix out with flake, which allows me to ball it up. There we go. And although I haven't actually been using a lot of bait in each spot, because I've been baiting pretty regularly, I've been getting through it. So I got through a couple of kilos of bait yesterday. Surprising, really. But there you go, that'll be enough for a few hours. So I've spent the last couple of hours looking, baiting, checking areas. All the baits remained untouched. I've not seen one single carp, even in the back of the snags. You know, I've been up trees, I've crawled through the bushes. They're just not here. They've pushed out into the open water. That weather change has really affected them. Where yesterday there was still a few fish in the bays, they're just not here now. I can actually see them fizzing out in the open water. It's really frustrating. I can't fish for them. So I'm going to roll the dice. You know, this type of fishing, the last sort of 20 odd hours I've been fishing for fish that I could see or that I knew they were there, and now I know they're not here. So I need to sort of change something. I can either fish out in the lake or I can have a quick venue change. I do happen to have a Horton ticket and it's just round the corner. So I'm going to bop there for the last couple of hours of my 24-hour session. Just see if they're in the edge there. Things might be a bit different, a bit more sheltered. You know, this is a massive 70-acre gravel pit and the fish are really affected by the weather. And I guess that's the first lesson of edge fishing. You know, they've got to be in the edge if you want to catch them in the edge. Yesterday they were, today they're not. Let's go see if we can find them somewhere else. So move we did. Hot-footed it back to the van. You know, once the decision was made, it was time to really get a move on. I didn't actually have that much time left. I made the short hop to Horton. I've got a little under 3 hours left of my session. I'm going to dump the barra, grab my baiting pouch, go for a wander, see if I can find some carp in the edge. It's a bit more sheltered here. See if we can find something. It shows just from yesterday, you know, that if you find some fish, you can catch them quickly. And I was pretty sure that if I found fish somewhere on the boat pool or Kingsmead or Horton, that I'd have an opportunity in that last couple of hours. Yeah, matey caught one from here the other day. Like here. There was a tail waving and he lowered the rig in and caught a little fully scaled, but shows how close they do get in. A load of white pellet. Not a load actually, it's just a small handful. But it's not been eaten. Over there as well. Quite a bit of fizzing in the edge here. Well yeah, look, and next door. The sort of features that I'm looking for in the edge, you know, they're pretty obvious. They're reed beds, they're overhangs, they're snags, they're any carp holding feature, they're any waypoint that the carp might visit on their travels. I haven't come across a venue yet where you can't catch carp out of the edge. I haven't, you know, from the biggest lake to the smallest, from the rivers to the canals. In a lot of venues, it's the best feature. In some venues, it's the only feature. So it's definitely not to be ignored wherever you fish. Oh, so many fish fizzing, man. There's like at least 3 of them down here as well, just off the tip of the tree. I'm like, which rod do I sacrifice to put in the edge? And then I look out and they're both bubbling over both of them. During this session, I might have only caught 2 carp, but I've actually watched quite a lot of different fish feed, and I've watched them come close to the hook bait. So I've had that excitement of which you would normally only get with a bite, but I've had that same excitement of watching them and watching them come close and praying for them to come up to the rig. You know, you don't get that when you're just watching by the rods. You know, you might go, come on carp, but you can't actually see them coming up to your rig and going, come on carp. That's a bit different. So yeah, fishing that way, it gives you a bit of bonus excitement that you wouldn't get just being sat behind rods fishing blind. Well, that's it, time's up. Time to reel in. End of my 24. The lads allowed me one last roll of the dice, which I'm thankful for. It nearly paid off. There were definitely a good few fish feeding out here. And I managed to nick a bite, but unfortunately not the target species. It's been a good 24 anyway. Caught a couple of really nice fish. And it just shows the nature of margin fishing and fishing in the edge. If they're there, they can be quite easy to catch and the bites can come really quickly. Anyway, let's get this last rod in and hit the road.